to say this to you. You have $7,000 of income, inflation adjusted, for the rest of your life if you decide to retire today. That's a pretty clean-cut statement. Most people would hear that and be able to say, yeah, that's enough, or no, that's not enough, I need more. Well, let me ask that same question in a different way. You have $750,000 in an investment portfolio. Is that enough to sustain you for the rest of your life if you retire? All of a sudden, we introduce confusion, uncertainty, second guessing. But here's the thing. At a deeper level, we may be saying the exact same thing. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. The difference in how we interpret these questions has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with the way human beings process money. Mathematically, these two statements might represent the same economic reality, but psychologically, they're worlds apart, and that gap is where anxiety lives. Income feels predictable and usable. You likely know how to budget an income. You've likely been doing it for decades and do something for decades, and you get pretty darn good at it. Your brain categorizes income as spendable. It's earned, it shows up, you use it, and it shows up again. A portfolio feels completely different. It kind of feels abstract, maybe a little bit vulnerable. It fluctuates every day. The balance is always visible, which makes it very easy for us to react to emotionally. And withdrawals don't feel like just using money. They might feel like damaging the portfolio. And even though income and a portfolio might represent the same economic reality, only one of them truly feels safe emotionally for most people. Now let me flip the script for a moment. Let's say when you turn 18 or so, you're magically given a pot of money. And let's say it's about $2 million, since that's roughly in line with what the lifetime earnings are for someone with a bachelor's degree. That might feel incredible at first, but there's one rule. You never get to go earn another dollar. That $2 million has to cover everything for the rest of your life. A house, a handful of cars, childcare, healthcare, food, retirement, all of it. All of a sudden, that lump sum feels pretty different. How do you know it's safe? How do you make it last? Let's compare that to life. Expenses unfold over time. Life happens month after month, and you usually get a paycheck every other week. And that steady income turns a lifetime problem into something that feels manageable, and that's why income can feel calming, whereas portfolios might generate some anxiety, even if the math says they're the same thing. This explains why so many people say, I know the math says I'm fine, but I don't feel fine. What if I run out of money? What if the market crashes right after I retire? They're reacting to uncertainty that's framed in a way of assets rather than regularly reoccurring income. Now I'm going to show you a set of tables, and I'm not going to walk through every single number. That's not really the point, and you can certainly hit pause at any moment you wish so you could take a further look at these tables if I go through them too quickly. But the goal of these tables is to show you how to translate a portfolio into income. And within these tables, you're going to see a wide variety of examples. You're going to see a single household where Social Security counts for $2,000 a month of income. You'll see a dual income household where Social Security brings in $4,000 a month. We're going to look at portfolios that range in size from $500,000, $750,000, all the way up to $1 million, and different withdrawal rates ranging from 3% all the way up to 6% of a portfolio's value. If we talk about a conservative 3% withdrawal rate and a dual income household with a $750,000 portfolio, we're looking at a household income of about $5,900 a month. Or let's consider a single income household using a more typical 4% withdrawal rate. With a $750,000 portfolio, we've got a monthly income of about $4,500. Let's jump to a 5% withdrawal rate and look at $1 million portfolio and go back to a dual income household. Now we're looking at about $8,200 a month as a reliable income coming in month after month. Or what about a 6% withdrawal rate? Looking at a $500,000 portfolio for a single individual, that would give $4,500 in monthly income. If we stick to that same withdrawal rate and go to $1 million portfolio, we now have $7,000 in monthly income. And this is not about picking a perfect withdrawal rate. That is an entirely different conversation. There is no one perfect withdrawal rate. It depends on your retirement time horizon, your health span, and your spending needs. And it's unlikely that you'll stick to a single withdrawal rate throughout your entire retirement. It's likely that it will flex over time. What I hope to do with these tables is to give you a range where you could look at an income and say, yes, this income feels reasonable, sustainable, and emotionally safe for me. So instead of asking, is this portfolio enough, you would start asking, is this level of income enough? And there are some planning tools today that are now going the extra step, and they're taking total portfolio balances and translating that into monthly income. And this is incredibly powerful. This is a wonderful shift. But if the tools available to you don't do this, it's worth taking that extra step and doing it manually, because seeing it as a monthly income rather than one straight total balance can absolutely change how you think and how you feel in retirement. Now, a quick note about inflation, since this comes up in every single video and every single comment section, so let's address it clearly. Safe withdrawal rates are defined as the withdrawal plus an annual inflation adjustment. So what you're looking at in the tables here is that starting withdrawal in year one. Each year going forward, you would be allowed to add an inflation adjustment. Social Security, that also gets an annual inflationary adjustment. So what you're looking at here is spending in real terms. It would be able to be inflation adjusted over time to help preserve purchasing power. Here's what the best behavioral research shows us. At the heart of all of this is a simple behavioral truth. We're just better at thinking in terms of income rather than lump sums. We know how to manage cash flow. We know how to manage a paycheck. But when somebody says, hey, live off this pile of money, we don't really know how to do that easily. It's not something we've really done before. And it's really about how the human brain organizes money. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler put it this way: people don't treat all dollars the same. We create mental accounts, and those accounts drive behavior far more than traditional economic theory assumes. Money lives in categories in our mind. Income might go in one bucket and portfolio balances in another bucket, and that income feels usable, whereas that portfolio bucket might feel untouchable or a little bit fragile. And this way of framing things matters more than a lot of people realize. Retirement researcher David Blanchett has shown that this difference shows up clearly in retirement behavior. Retirees are far more comfortable spending income they perceive as reliable than drawing from investment balances, even when the expected value is the same. Same math, completely different experiences. When money shows up as income, people feel like they have permission to spend it. When it shows up as a portfolio balance, people tend to hesitate. That's why retirees might feel financially secure on paper, but actually experience anxiety in their day-to-day life. How you frame your portfolio matters just as much as how much you've saved. One of the strongest findings in retirement research is that framing matters more than net worth. Research shows this very clearly. Retirees who frame their wealth as income tend to spend more appropriately. They panic less during market downturns, and they consistently report higher retirement satisfaction. Retirees who frame their wealth as a total portfolio tend to experience the opposite. They tend to underspend. They tend to second-guess themselves. They tend to experience higher anxiety levels even at higher wealth levels. Same money, different framing, different outcomes. Imagine two retirees, both age 67. They live in the same town, they have the same lifestyle, they spend about $5,000 a month, and they each have a $900,000 portfolio. Nothing about their finances is different. What's different is how they experience their money. One retiree checks their portfolio balance every single week, sometimes every single day. Every single market move creates an emotional reaction. Spending feels kind of risky. They only withdraw from their portfolio when it feels safe to do so. The other retiree sets up an automatic paycheck that arrives at the start of every month. That's the number they live on. They check their portfolio maybe once a year just to make sure it's still aligned with their target allocation. Outside of that, they kind of just ignore their balance and they just live their life. In either of these situations, nothing about the portfolio changed. The framing did, and that absolutely changed the lived experience. One of the most powerful findings in retirement research is what's known as the license to spend effect. Researchers use this idea to describe a simple reality. When income is perceived as permanent and predictable, people feel allowed to use it. That's why Social Security feels safe. It shows up every single month. Over time, it gets an inflation adjustment, and regardless of what the market does, it just keeps showing up. Pensions are much the same way. Even any small guaranteed streams of income have a noticeable effect. Truly, it's often not about how big the income stream is, but rather how reliable it feels. Now compare that to a portfolio. Even a $1 million portfolio can feel fragile. Perhaps every withdrawal feels irreversible, and market declines don't just reduce balances, they feel personal. People generally aren't sitting there and asking themselves, is this withdrawal sustainable over the next 25 or 30 years? Generally, they're saying, am I safe? Is this a mistake? And that can lead to a spiral, as in, what if the market suddenly tumbles? What if the Fed changes rates? What if the political climate changes? None of those questions change the long-term plan, but it can change how safe that decision feels in the moment. That's the license to spend effect. Reliable income makes spending feel normal. Balances make spending feel risky. And that difference can be the difference between a retirement that is simply survived and one that is truly enjoyed. Richard Thaler's work shows that losses are felt roughly 2 to 2.5 times more strongly than gains. So a 20% market decline doesn't just reduce wealth, it destroys the permission to spend. This is why so many retirees freeze during market downturns, even when their plan says they're fine. It's also why they don't tend to increase their spending above their targeted withdrawal, even if the markets are performing well, even when a higher spend would absolutely be justifiable. Let's put some numbers to this. Imagine a retiree with a $1 million portfolio. If the market is up 10%, their account goes up $100,000. That feels good, but it doesn't suddenly give them permission to spend 10% more than their targeted withdrawal. Now flip that around. If the market is down 20%, that same portfolio drops to $800,000. Mathematically, the long-term plan very well may still be intact. The withdrawal rate may still be safe and sustainable. But psychologically, that loss doesn't feel like 20%. It might feel like something closer to 40 or 50% loss. The brain weighs losses far more heavily than it does gains. So what tends to happen next? Well, spending freezes. Travel tends to get postponed. Discretionary spending gets cut a great deal. It's not that the withdrawal plan failed, it's that permission to spend did. That's why retirees often pull back after market downturns, even when their planning assumptions say they're still on track. The math may say you're totally fine, but psychology says stop right now. If you don't design around that reality, behavior, not returns, could end up driving your retirement outcome. Retirement success depends less on how much money you have and more on how clearly you can see your income. So it can be really good to move your goal away from maximizing returns and constantly watching your balance to making your income visible, making it reliable, and making it boring as heck. Now, how can we trick our brain? This is where real planning adds value. So we know people spend more confidently when portfolios are translated into monthly income. So the best practice is actually pretty straightforward. Show your retirement plan in monthly income as often as possible. Hide the balances whenever possible and keep asking yourself this question: how much does this pay me? Anytime you check your balances, immediately translate it into a monthly paycheck. Do the same when you're running your future projections as well. You can even do the same thing with Monte Carlo simulations. Instead of here's your ending balance in 30 years, think you can spend X per month with Y% of confidence. This shift turns large abstract numbers into something your brain is really well equipped to work with. Even when the math says all of your money is one portfolio, your brain doesn't experience it that way. Mental accounting reduces anxiety because it gives each dollar a job, and when it feels like each dollar has a job, spending feels more intentional rather than risky. A simple framework might look something like this: an income floor made up of guaranteed and highly stable sources that cover your essential spending, an income bridge designed for near-term spending needs with low volatility so you're not forced to sell at the wrong time, and a growth layer invested for long-term needs where volatility has time to work in your favor. This is absolutely not about squeezing out higher returns. It's about separating money you need from money you can let fluctuate. And that separation matters because once your essentials are mentally protected, your discretionary feels much safer. So it's really about giving yourself permission to spend and giving yourself the ability to enjoy the retirement you've worked so hard for. Also, retirees tend to do best when they anchor their spending to a floor, not a ceiling. The question isn't what's the maximum I could spend if everything goes right. Rather, it's what's the safest amount I can spend no matter what. Floors kind of create confidence because they give you a baseline. You know exactly how much you can spend in good markets and bad markets and everything in between. This feels safe. Ceilings kind of do the opposite. They introduce moments of hesitation when the market performs poorly. Even very wealthy retirees behave better when they have a solid floor in place. So when you give yourself a floor, you allow yourself to introduce flexibility when the markets are favorable. And research shows the more often you see your balances, the more conservative you behave. Because constant exposure really has a way of fueling emotion. So if you're one who's constantly checking your account balances, maybe you shift how often you're checking it. Maybe you change to a quarterly check or a biannual check or an annual check. Focus on your income. Is this income showing up as planned? And this can absolutely improve your decision quality. Another area where the research is absolutely clear: slightly lower expected income with higher stability beats higher expected income with higher volatility. Because stable income keeps people invested when their portfolio is seen as their lifeline. Volatility can create errors, and errors can absolutely dictate outcomes. Retirement plans fail when people don't feel safe spending the money they already have. It's not usually about having enough money. So instead of asking that standard question of, do I have enough? Ask, do I have enough income to support the life I want? When people shift and stop looking at their portfolio as a total dollar value, but rather as monthly income, decision quality improves and confidence improves. So let me know, is this something you're going to try to do? Translate your portfolio into a monthly income stream? I'd love to hear your feedback. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.